at all, and because I didn't take it seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, I was drinking and smoking and all the rest, and like I was saying I'm a Muslim and eating pork, and like nothing was different about my life. For me, it was more like there was this thing I'd come across. It made sense to me. I would say I'm a Muslim, but I didn't practice. I didn't do anything. You know, like some things happened like between me and my girlfriend at the time, and that was just like a big catalyst for me, and I totally changed literally. You know, I used to smoke quite a lot of weed and stuff and hash, and like just like got rid of everything, like literally overnight, from this to that, boom. You know, anyone who smokes a lot of weed will know how hard it is. But you know, to get your stash and just throw it away, it was a big thing. Like for me, I still remember it was just tipping it out into the thing, throwing it away. It was like, I was digging around for it the next day, you know? And it was like, what have I done? I'm not saying this boasting, but my pocket money was probably what most people's wages were, right? And that's my pocket money, right? So like, you know, you're talking like, when I was thinking of money, I'm thinking about jets, yachts, my own private island, you know, that type of stuff, right? I'm thinking that's where I need to get to. Maybe I'll find happiness there, right? I came to a point when I actually made my own religion. I actually came up with my own religion, which is like a bit of Buddhism and a bit of Christianity, you know, a bit like everything, like all the nice bits, you know? Yeah. I could say, well, okay, what's the hardest thing for you, right, to give up? Yeah. And we didn't have a term for it then, right? But now there's a term for it, white privilege. I didn't call it white privilege, right? But now I would say, if they asked me, the hardest thing to give up is white privilege. When I went from the areas that, you know, the actual enclosed area, and I stepped down into the open area where the people are making tawaf, and it's when I went into that throng of people making tawaf, that moment then, it's just like that white, it evaporated, bro. I realized I was nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. I realized that being white, being British, my passport, it was nothing. It was nothing. My dad died like, what was it now? You know, 3-4 years ago. Alhamdulillah, he became Muslim. There's video, you can see the video on YouTube. Alhamdulillah, 10 days before he died, he took his shahada. You know, the day my dad took shahada, right? I went back and told my mum. I said, okay. I said to Dad, you know, say shahada, and he did. He's become Muslim and whatever. I said, bro, why didn't you help? And then he said, Abdurraheem, you have to understand what it was like being a black kid brought up in Brixton and what we went through. And then it's like I realized I had no idea when he started telling me. That was really more or less the foundation of what became the man in the red underpants, so like a very slimmed down version, right? To the extent that the Rand Corporation, right? They wrote, you could probably still find it, they wrote a paper called Democratizing Islam, right? Okay? And they quoted me twice in that paper based upon this letter that I written to my dad. Say, bro, I was going to ask you a question, like, you know, how do you feel like that all your fame and everyone knows you off the back of them thinking that you're actually me?
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir.
This is going to be a long day. Come on, bro. Get yourself together.
Okay.
Deep breath. This is never gonna happen, bro.
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa ta'ala. Welcome to the Young Smirks podcast. I'm here today not doing great stuff.
Bro, it's called Young Smirks. Just get on with it, bro. Like, seriously, what's the problem?
إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa welcome to the Young Smirks podcast. I'm joined with a very special guest, Abdurraheem Green. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Salam, bro. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Alhamdulillah. I'm very
Good
well.
to see you again. Sheikh, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Subhanallah. Not seen you for a long time, and I just wanted to speak to you about your early dawah. You've been a big inspiration to myself. I remember before I was a Muslim, seeing you on Peace TV. You know, one of the people who I seen, and I thought, okay, I can actually be a Muslim. You know, there's actually white Muslims out there. I remember the exact video I was watching. Just seeing you. I think you had like a blue jacket, long, red hair, mashallah. And so ever since that day, you know, it really inspired me. Even seeing people like yourself, Yusuf Estes, other English people who have embraced Islam.
Because Yusuf's American, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, true.
No problem.
True.
That's fine.
No, but
shouldn't get confused. But.
Well, people think I'm you.
Well, I was going to say, bro, I was going to ask you a question. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how do you feel like that all your fame and everyone knows you off the back of them thinking that you're actually me?
It's true.
Yeah, no,
I
all white people look the same, bro.
It's true.
No, honestly,
It's
like,
true.
people say, I saw you at Mecca. I haven't been to Mecca for like years and years. What are you talking about? No, it was you, definitely. It's like, yeah.
I remember, no, subhanAllah, I remember someone came all the time, like literally even the local takeaway near my house. They thought I was Abdurraheem Green.
Yeah.
You know, subhanAllah, a lot of people, that, you know, you was telling, well, the first time I met you, do you remember the first time I met you?
No.
It was at the Birmingham Convivencia event.
Okay.
And I remember you spoke first, and you said, I'm just very happy to finally meet John. You know, everyone thinks he's my son.
Yeah.
And then I stood up and I said, I'm very happy to meet Abdurraheem Green for the first time. Everyone thinks he's my granddad.
Yeah,
remember?
I remember that.
You wasn't too happy.
That
about
I haven't forgotten until today.
Yeah, no hard feelings, Sheikh.
No, sorry, no. They're definitely hard feelings, bro. I'm hanging on to that hard feeling. It's all right. No
So
problem.
I wanted to speak to you a bit about your early dawah because, you know, you became popular and you kind of learnt your craft in Hyde Park.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, people have mixed feelings about Hyde Park today.
Mm.
You know, some people think it's beneficial, some people think,
Yeah.
you know, it's not
they always
really.
did, to be honest, bro. Even
Mhm.
back in the days, people had mixed feelings about it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how do you think it's changed over the years? Has it changed much?
I don't know, because I haven't really been. So the last time I went, well, I've only been a couple of times. I went very soon after 9/11. I went down there once, or very soon after. I gave a talk there. And I went one other time, but that was more like just for filming for Aira, you know. So I'm not really familiar. I know from hearing about it from the brothers and stuff that it all seems to be very led by social media. You know, it's a lot of, it's all a lot of playing to the camera, you know. So back in the days, it was very different. Although I think we were the first people who started filming down there, and you know, until today, those videos are out there on, you know, Dawah in the Park videos, and they were very, very popular. But it wasn't really the main component. It was like a sort of add-on, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big, you know, the big change. But I think fundamentally, it's still really the same place. I guess back in the days, it's like it was really important to be able to stand up and speak and deliver a speech. You know, like you couldn't get away with just like, okay, yeah, sure. We would chat to people on the side, and that's where a lot of the real Dawah went on. But for those of us who were like the speakers, you really had to learn to deliver a speech and keep people's attention. You know,
that seems to have gone now. Like I remember, Sabor's still trying to reignite that. I think he's got his stepladders. He stands up and gives a speech, and I quite like that kind of you know, where you actually give. You know,
I mean, that's
an
what
address to the audience.
I guess that's Speaker's Corner. That's the whole point. You're supposed to go down there and give speeches and generate debate that way. But there always was a lot of, you know, people discussing and having debates on the side. That was always there, to be honest. It always was there. In fact, one of the big challenges back in the day was always to try and get more focus on the speaker rather than like get everyone diverted away from the main event, because that would happen a lot. But we had a sort of technique actually. If there was someone who wanted a sort of debate with the speaker, we had people there ready to take that person on the side and take them away onto the grass and sit down and have a chat with them.
Stop them heckling.
Yeah, well, stop them from, but obviously sometimes they were just genuine, people who needed a more of an in-depth conversation. So we had a nice little system going there back in the days as well. We were surprisingly organised, actually. It wasn't just as random as one might have imagined.
Yeah. So I wanted to speak a bit about how did you find Islam? Because I know you've got quite an interesting story.
I'm surprised you're going to ask me that question because like it's so easy to find my story about how I became Muslim.
But the thing is, I think there's a few things that have not been documented.
Yeah, like what?
I don't know. maybe you can enlighten us.
Earlier. Yeah. No.
I mean,
No, like what?
You've had a lot of experiences, haven't you?
I mean, the thing is that, I mean, it's one of those things, bro, when to be honest, I've said the story so many times. It's like, I just say to everyone, go and watch the video. But I mean, very briefly, look, I don't know, I was brought up a Roman Catholic. I went to a Roman Catholic monastic boarding school. I had lots of questions, but my fundamental questions were really, I guess, about what's the purpose of life. And it was basically because I just didn't enjoy school at all. I didn't really get why I was at this boarding school stuck in the middle of, the edge of the Yorkshire Moors, literally. And far away from almost everyone and everything. And I didn't really enjoy it at all. And I guess that sort of prompted me to ask like deep questions about what am I even doing here? Why am I at this? It went from why am I at this school to what is even all of this school about? Right? Why am I studying? I'm studying to go to university so I can get a good job, so I can earn enough money, right? To send my kids back to the same school so they can do the same thing. Yeah. And I thought, is that it? That really is, because I really couldn't see anything except that was the only thing I could see, is that was it. And I thought, that can't be what life is about. And I think that's what really started me questioning. And then I had too many doubts about Christianity and in general, Catholicism in particular. And I just searched through different religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, like the whole, it's the back end of the, it's the 70s, but the hippie stuff was still around there. So there was that whole sort of psychic energy and, that type of stuff going on, right? So I was looking into all of this stuff, philosophy, everything. And I guess just looking through different religions and different things, and I came to a point when I actually made my own religion. I actually came up with my own religion, which is like a bit of Buddhism and a bit of Christianity and a bit like everything, like all the nice bits, Yeah. And I actually have a notebook where I actually sketched the outline of this. I actually still got it somewhere.
Serious?
Right? Yeah, I found it. And the funny thing was that it was a very little thing, although in my mind now it was a big thing. But actually, in terms of my actual notes, it was not really much at all. But it was the worst. Like that, my own religion was absolutely the worst thing of all. And I got to the stage where I thought, maybe there's no religion, maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's just like, maybe really it is money. Maybe that's what it really is about. I just don't have enough money. Yeah. And I thought, and like from my background, enough money, like. You're moving on to a different level, right? If I think I needed more money than I had, that was, my pocket, I'm not saying this boasting, but my pocket money was probably what most people's wages were, right? And that's my pocket money, right? So you're talking like, when I was thinking of money, I'm thinking about jets, yachts, my own private island, that type of stuff, right? I'm thinking that's where I need to get to. Maybe I'll find happiness there, right? So, but I thought, I don't want to have to work hard for my money. Like, what's the point? Like, because the whole point is to enjoy yourself, and if I'm going to work so hard, where's the enjoyment going to be, right? So I'm looking for the shortcut. I'm looking for, how can I get the maximum amount of money with the least amount of work? I suppose in some ways.
Starting a religion.
Yeah, no, but that's I didn't think about that, to be honest, because that would I don't know.
I've seen people literally start different churches in Africa. As a business,
I honestly could have. The funny thing was, I realized like 3-4 years into Islam, I realized I could have done it. I actually, but that was once I discovered Islam. Yeah. I realized this is dangerous knowledge, because you could really use. And I think any serious Christian or anyone who goes into any book that's got some semblance of something left in it, they could you know, it's not hard to start a cult, man. You know, it's not hard. You know that, but so anyway, yeah. So I was, like I said, I was searching for what's the easiest way to get money without working hard for it. So I started thinking I guess my thing was history. I went to university to study history, and I guess that's where I started thinking historically, you know, like who are the people who have the most money? Like who are the rich people in the world? Who is the rich countries? Like, so I thought of Britain, Industrial Revolution is a rich country, sixth, seventh richest country in the world. I thought Industrial Revolution, you know, all that capitalism, that's way too much work. America, the American dream, you know, the American dream is you work yourself up from the ditch, you know, and you work yourself self-made. Like that was all too much hard. The Japanese, they were rich, but that was just all they did was work. Like none of that was like appealed to me. And then I thought, oh my God, those Saudis, right? They're rich. Like, what have they done? They just sat on their camels for 1,000 years going Allahu Akbar, right? What have they done? Nothing, right? Literally nothing. And I thought, but they've got all this money.
Yeah.
I said, that sounds like that's the game there, right? No work, lots of money. What are these guys?
It sounds like a similar idea to the young Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't
want
know,
a piece
bro.
of that, you know.
Yeah, well, whatever it was, but it was like, honestly, that was it. I literally, that's the attitude I went to when I picked up the Quran, because I thought, I knew their book was the Quran, that's their religion. And I thought, okay, what do I know about these people? They're Muslim, what's their book, Quran? Let me find out about them, right? So the interesting thing was, I was not looking for anything in the Quran. Like, I just wanted to see, what is this about? So that it was interesting that my frame of mind was totally without any preconceptions at all. I was not approaching the Quran with any other agenda except I wanted to understand what this book was saying. Yeah. And that was it. Like I got, you know, through, obviously it was a translation, but I got like 3/4 of the way through it and I just knew. I said, this is it. If there's ever been a book that's from God, this is the one. You know, I just knew from all my studies. So you have to remember, like, reading the Bible, Bhagavad Gita, all these scriptures, Buddhist, I just knew that there was nothing I'd ever come across was like the Quran.
What was it that, because you're saying like 3/4 through, what was the...
I think the key points were, number one, right, lots of descriptions of the akhirah, right?
Yeah.
So the Quran was talking about paradise, hellfire, the day of judgment, right? And like, wait a minute, if that's going to be, if that's where we're going to be for eternity, we definitely, like, surely a book that is from God is going to tell us some details about that.
Yeah.
So I think that was the first thing that, not just some details, a lot of detail. I think that was one of the first things that really, like, impressed me about the Quran. And then, like, the other thing, it just answered some questions, like the Trinity. Just dealt with the issue of the Trinity. Just like, it was just like, it made so much sense.
Did you ever believe in the Trinity?
No. And I always struggled with it. I made myself believe it, in the sense that, you know, I tried to find ways really hard, try to find ways to believe it, but it's not rational, right? You believe it by, like they would say, you have to accept it. It's a mystery. You just have to believe. There's not a rational explanation for it. It's just something you have to believe and you have to accept it. And I guess that, you know, that's just not good enough for me, right? I wasn't going to just believe it because someone told me to. And I think the scriptural foundations of it are very shaky as well. Like, it's very, like, if you go to the Bible and you read it without, you know, bias, if you go to it not looking to find the Trinity, it's not something that's going to jump out from the Bible at you, right? In fact, if anything, it's how human Jesus is, right? Not how divine he is, right? So, no, I always struggled with the Trinity a lot. That was one of the big issues I had with Catholicism.
I come from a Church of England background, so it's slightly different, but again, the same issue
fundamentally
with the
the
Trinity,
same. CAV and Catholicism, very, very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference is things like confession. I never
Even
really...
the saints.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
the saint
seeking help from
worship.
the saints.
That was another, a lot of that
England,
Mariology. You know, like Mary's almost like a divine being, really. You know, so that. I think the funny thing was, I remember, like, I often talk about how I remember my mum when I must have been like 9 years old, and my mum was talking to me about because I was going to school. So she was telling me, like, trying to teach me the Hail Mary, because she thought like, I'm going to this Catholic school, I better, prepare them for, going to the school. And so she taught this prayer, Hail Mary, which is like, that's a particular Catholic prayer. So it's Hail Mary, Mother of God, blessed art thou amongst women. And when she said, Hail Mary, Mother of God, I remember thinking, Mother of God? What? How can God have a mother? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so...
Like, how can someone give birth to... I was trying to sit there, I was thinking, how can someone be God's mummy? God's supposed to be the creator, you understand, the whole thing was just, that's just crazy. And then I thought, well, maybe she's a bigger God than God. If she's God's mummy, she must be bigger, It's just like in my little kid's way, I tried to, because, whatever your mum says, you sort of accept it, so, no, I never got down with that Trinity stuff, man, no.
Since accepting Islam, how has your kind of dawah to your parents kind of evolved or changed?
Well, my dad died, like, what was it now, 3-4 years ago. Alhamdulillah, he became Muslim. There's video, you can see the video on YouTube. 10 days before he died, he took his shahada. My mum is still very obstinate. She's just not, like, my mum is a very strange one, because you'll have a conversation with her. She'll basically, 1 minute she'll be saying she only believes there's one God, right? It never makes sense to her how Jesus is God and that type of stuff. And then you'll have another conversation with her and she'll be defending the Trinity, although she has no idea what the Trinity is, because when you actually discuss it with her, and like so what? Yeah, basically defense, that's it. My mum once said, "Oh, if I wasn't a Catholic, I would have converted." And I thought, no, if you were born worshipping in a society that worshipped the tusk of a walrus, you'd still be worshipping the tusk of a walrus, because that's she's just following what her people do, right? I mean, she doesn't have any crosses, she doesn't have any statues, she doesn't have any icons, nothing like that, because the second commandment is, "You shall not make any graven images." She knows that. Right, yet she's a Catholic, and Catholicism is full of that. So like, it's very, very, my mum is like very strange. Like, in some times it's like she's a and then sometimes she's, I don't even know if there's a God. I don't even know if there's a paradise or a hellfire. So she's like all over the place, my mum. Like, she has no real certainty, I think, about anything to do with religion.
How did she feel with your father accepting Islam?
I think it was a very hard time, bro. It's like, I don't think she really computed about it, because my dad was, I would say he took like 2 years to die, on and off. It was like he was very ill for about 2 years. So it was a long, long time. It was a lot of stress, mostly on my mum, but me as well. I was there a lot of the time with her. And so it was just I would tell her I'm going to get him to become Muslim before he dies. Like, I was up front with my mum about it. I'm going to try and convert him, and she knew it. It wasn't like we didn't, we were, because I think we spent so much time together at that time. We were like very close, I suppose we could say anything. And like, we would alternate. So she would go to see my dad one day and I would go the next day. And so we would just say, like, it happened that when she went back from the hospital, I said, how's dad? And he'd tell me, and vice versa, right? So the day I took my dad, he took Shahada, right? I went back and told my mum. I said, okay. I said to dad, say Shahada, and he did. He's become Muslim. And she was like, oh, okay. That was it, really, So she just, I think she's sort of, like, it's a bit complicated with my mum, because she had some, like, she had I think she had a really bad flu, right, a few years ago, and it like messed her brain up really badly. And, she's getting old as well. So like, I think she even forgot everything about what happened. She thinks my dad is buried, his ashes are in the garden. He's not. He's buried in a Muslim cemetery in, like in Lisbon. She doesn't even remember that anymore. So, I mean, I do try and tell her, and she's very confused about stuff. Like old people do get a bit confused.
How did they react when you became a Muslim? Did they think it was like a phase?
Oh, in the beginning, definitely.
You'd already kind of been researching.
Yeah, for sure. In the beginning, they didn't take it seriously at all, and because I didn't take it seriously. I mean, I was drinking and smoking and all the rest, and like I was saying, I'm a Muslim and eating pork, and like nothing was different about my life. For me, it was more like there was this thing I'd come across. It made sense to me. I would say I'm a Muslim, but I didn't practice. I didn't do anything. Like I did in the beginning, and then I just like left it. But then, okay, it all flipped, and I started.
How long did it take for you to?
2 years. 2 years before I, you know, like some things happened, like between me and my girlfriend at the time, and that was just like a big catalyst for me, and I totally changed. Literally, you know, I used to smoke quite a lot of weed and stuff and hash, and I just like got rid of everything, like literally overnight, from this to that, boom, you know. It was just like that moment where it just literally switched, you know. And you know,
I remember coming home to my parents,
and
I told them, I said, I'm never going to drink again, and they just burst out laughing. I'm like, no, I'm serious. You know, and I've never drank since.
So how do you survive?
No, drinking.
I know, bro. What you mean? I know what you mean. Yeah,
no, subhanAllah. I think because these things usually are addictive, right?
You
know, I mean, of course, new Muslims still
like anyone who
things,
smokes a lot of weed will know how hard it is to get your stash that you've like back in. I don't know what it's like now. I think it's like, you know, quite easy to get hold of. And back in the days, it wasn't that easy to get hold of. You know. You had to go around, you had to know someone. It was like a whole. I'm sure it is still like that to some extent, but you know, to get your stash and just throw it away, it was a big thing. Like for me, I still remember it was just tipping it out into the thing, throwing it away. It was like, I was digging around for it the next day, you know? And it was like, what have I done? But alhamdulillah, no, I stacked.
Do you know I did that with my CDs? I threw out all my CDs, right? And I was living in a flat at the time. And the neighbour underneath the flat digged them all out, and I was listening to them for the next 6 months. He was literally playing all this music. Like, I'm like, oh no,
what?
You know, should have like cracked them or something. But subhanAllah.
That's brilliant.
But subhanAllah. It's not easy. I mean, for like the new Muslims who, you know, people who embrace Islam, struggling with things like this, it's not easy.
No, it's not, bro. There's a lot of tests, a lot of trials. I mean, everyone's got their own particular, you know, and they're still going on, bro. It's like people think, oh, you reverts, they think we're some sort of better than them, and it's not necessarily true at all. I remember, like, when I was, I mean, one of the interesting things is that, like, when I was working in the London Central Mosque, the kids used to come and I'd, you know, show them around the mosque and stuff. And so one of the things they'd ask me is like, once the kids say, well, okay, what's the hardest thing for you, right, to give up? And we didn't have a term for it then, right? But now there's a term for it, white privilege. I didn't call it white privilege, right? But now I would say, if they ask me, the hardest thing to give up is white privilege. You know, that idea that you are better because you're British, because you're white, because you're whatever. That is because that's something deep. You know, that's like from when you're little.
I don't think someone can even. I think it's very difficult to become a Muslim unless that is broken first. Because I remember going to Africa as a non-Muslim, and I had this kind of idea of the Great British Empire type thing. You know, I wasn't. My family are not racist, really. But I was proud of. The history of Britain.
Bro, I was brought. My dad was a colonial administrator, right? My dad was a colonial administrator. Worked for the IMF, Barclays International, right? He was posted to Egypt. You know, the British embassy in Egypt is still a leftover of the days when the British ruled Egypt, right? It's this massive, huge place, right? We used to go there regularly. Like that's where we would sort of, my dad always knew the ambassadors, so like. That was still deep. Like breaking that. You're right, bro. You're right that in many ways I'd already broken it, but I wouldn't say it was like not getting fully, it out completely. Like Abu Dar. I'm sure he wasn't like really racist, but he still said to Bilal, "You son of a black woman," right? He still had that like getting rid of those. It's just like totally and the problem is, bro, because we're still surrounded by the fact that. We are privileged. That's just the reality. You know.
I mean, of course, you can get rid of you can try to get rid of your kind of superiority complex, but you're always going to be treated differently as well,
Yeah.
just by being white.
Yeah.
You know, which you can't deny that as well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
certain, you know, just the way you get treated in a local masjid, for instance. You know, it might be different to someone of a different background.
Well, back in the days, bro, there was a lot of hostility, actually, funnily enough. Like, people wouldn't even believe that you were actually Muslim. I remember walking to a mosque in Birmingham, and it says, like, "Are you a Muslim?" Yeah. He said, "No, you can't be. You're a Gura." You know, they couldn't believe that. Like, no, you're a Gura. You can't be Muslim.
Yeah.
And you know that Gura, but they say it in a certain way. Gura means kafir. It doesn't just mean Gura. It means kafir. Like, it's synonymous. Yeah. So it wasn't like always the case that you know, people looked at you because you're white, like you're something special, or what. It wasn't always like that. Not back in the days, bro. It was quite tough. And getting married, that was a whole different. That was a whole different ball game, bro. And people are still struggling with that, to be honest, until today. Yeah. So yeah, I think the thing is, like you said, it's that. It's not the superiority. Maybe it is a superiority. But you know the thing that really, subhanallah, I guess, like, you know, I in Buddhism, there's something called nirvana, right? Now, nirvana, most people think nirvana means bliss or like enlightenment. It doesn't. And the word nirvana means annihilation, right? So, like, the idea of the basic, I guess the basic idea of Buddhist philosophy is that the ego is the cause of all suffering, right? So the way you get rid of suffering, you know, within yourself and the world is by destroying the ego. But this destroying the ego it's not, so in Islam we have tazkiyat al-nafs, we have the purification of the, so that, like, the idea is that actually the ego is fundamentally a good thing. What's not good is when you take it beyond certain boundaries. But in Buddhism, it's no, you annihilate the ego, right? So the ideal is for you to have no identity whatsoever, right? There is no you. There's nothing that is you anymore, right? You are just, so you annihilate this ego, right? But I had this moment, like, there was a bit, when I made Hajj the first time, right? I think I experienced this sort of annihilation of my, like, and it's when, like, it was like
Totally
really surreal. Huh?
Like, totally insignificant.
That was it, bro. And like, you know, I remember arriving and it was at night. We arrived at night and it was floodlit. The Kaaba was floodlit. And it just looked like a movie screen. It didn't look real to me at all. It was like, okay, it's like, looks like a movie. Yeah. And then when I went from the, you know, from the areas that, you know, the actual enclosed area, and I stepped down into the open area where the people are making tawaf. And it's when I went into that throng of people making tawaf, that moment then, it's just like that white, it evaporated, bro. I realized I was nothing. It meant absolutely nothing. I realized that being white, being British, my passport, it was nothing. It was nothing. Me and all of those people, the only thing that Allah cared about is what's in the hearts. That's it. I knew I was just nothing. That moment for me was one of the most profound moments in my life. Yeah. That just annihilation of, like, Abdurraheem, you're nothing. You really, who are you? Nothing. You're just one amongst, and who knows who's the best of all of these people, right? You don't know it's you, right? Only just, you know, so that was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful moment, you know.
It's a huge experience, Hajj. You know, I remember the first time I went, same thing, you know, you just literally feel like an ant. Yeah. You know, millions of people and no one's looking at you. You know, they might look at you in your local mosque because you're white or whatever, but there it's just, no one cares. Everyone's focused on Allah. It really, but yeah, I mean, of course, this is something, as you're talking about the privilege, the white privilege, or the superiority complex, these type of things. This is kind of a hot topic at the moment. Yeah. You know, the Black Lives Matter kind of protests all around the world. What do you think about that? What's your kind of take on the whole?
I'm doing this, you know, this like podcast with Abdurraheem Baker, who's a comrade from back in the Salafi days, right? So we're just reliving a lot of the stuff that we went through and discussing it and how things have changed.
I was watching some. It's really, really
it's
nice.
Really. I enjoy it. I don't know if anyone enjoys listening, but I love doing it because it's just like, it's really good sometimes to go through that stuff. And one thing I remember with Abdurraheem, it's a, you know, like you have these things in your life that really stick out. And we'd come back from a talk. I remember a talk in Wales. I think it was in Swansea. We'd come back late at night, 1 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, and I was on my road. This is in London, literally on the, you know, on the road to my house, police stopped me outside my house, right? And they said, what are you doing? I said, well, I've come back. We're giving a talk in Wales, right? And so where do you live? I said, right here, that's my house. I couldn't believe it, right? But the police, when they stopped us, these guys were like, their eyes were bloodshot. They literally must have woken up, saw a car drive past and said, let's stop them, And then basically their car started sliding down the hill because they forgot to put the handbrake on. And they went running to stop the car. And I went running to help them, right? And Abdurraheem was standing there like that, like looking down like that with complete contempt, And anyway, they went and whatever. I said, bro, why didn't you help? And then he said, Abdurraheem, you have to understand what it was like being a black kid brought up in Brixton and what we went through. And then and it's like, I realized I had no idea when he started telling me, it's like, I didn't have and he said to me in this podcast, he said, you know why they stopped? You know why they stopped us, Abdurraheem? Because I was in the car. If it just been you, nothing would have happened. It's because there was a black guy, they thought I was your drug dealer. That's what they thought.
Subhanallah.
And it was like, oh my God, it took me 20 years just to hear that part of it as well. And he told me about, there was this shed in Clapham Common where they used to take black kids and beat them up. The police used to just beat them up just for fun, take them for a beating,
You can't imagine what it's like to live.
I know, no idea. Like I said, I was talking to Dilly about this in his podcast and he was saying it was like, for me, the police are the boys in blue.
Yeah.
They're the cavalry. That you look for them when you're feeling nervous. I remember, and this is not a racial thing, right? I remember once when I was at school and I was in a local town we used to go to, to go to the pub and stuff like that. It's called Helmsley, right? Was in this thing and I saw these flipping Hells Angel bikers and I was terrified. I was literally, where are the police? Where are the police? These guys gonna so it wasn't to do with whether these guys, to me, they just posed a threat, and the police were someone I believe were going to help me, and I still have that attitude towards. I still do have that attitude towards the police. From my perspective, I've never had a bad encounter. All my encounters with the police have been either neutral, right, or actually quite positive, right.
I mean, I'm not from such a privileged background, and I don't have a good experience with them,
right.
But I would say that. Obviously, because it's weird because my parents were from a very white racist area, and they were aware of this. So they sent me to school on the other side of Manchester, in Hume. Hume Moss side. It's more multicultural. There's lots of Asian, Caribbean, African, etc. So it's more mixed. So having that kind of experience in both areas. Really kind of, you realise that there is this racism and you see you treated differently. Even if you are pulled over in the white racist area, they don't treat you like a certain way. Where if you're with black friends, you definitely do see that. It's it exists. That's the thing,
But I think the whole issue is I don't know.
What do you think about all the? And I quite like the discussion about the whole colonialism and the slave trade. What's going on at the moment? They toppled the statue. I thought that was very interesting.
It's a whole can of worms, though, isn't it? Because slavery has existed. Up until recently, and it's still. Listen, let's be honest. Slavery still exists. We're just fooling ourselves. You can change the name, but the reality of slavery still exists, even in this country, right? Why did Theresa May pass which is one of the really decent things I have to say she did? She passed the modern slavery bill because slavery still exists. It's just a different form. People are still being bought and sold. They're still being trafficked. They're still being exploited, and not paid anything. And literally anything can be done to them, right? So it's always existed in human history, right? And it doesn't justify it, doesn't make it right. I think that what is really maybe particularly different about the Western, slave trade was it had a very strong racial element. It was justified, biblically justified, right? They justified it by the Bible. They justified white supremacy by the Bible, and they still do, some of them, right? And they justified slavery, right? based upon their. So I think that obviously slavery's existed in Islam as well, right?
Yeah.
But it was never a racial issue because the Moors were capturing white slaves, and they say that probably 1.5 million Europeans went into slavery in Morocco, right, over a period of a lot longer than the transatlantic slavery, like the period was hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So, but it was not based on race, right? It's just based on that was the status quo, right?
I mean, that was the times as well, you know, all the empires like.
But I think the other thing is that I think, you know, Islam's perspective on slavery is, it's interesting from the point of view of maybe trying to abolish slavery is futile in the sense that it's never going to stop. What is more effective is changing people's behaviors, right? Changing how you treat another human being, changing the way that you behave to them. And I think that you look at the Islamic paradigm and it was like, it didn't abolish slavery, right? But the relationship between the slave and the master was reformulated really dramatically, you know. So Islam gave very, very strong rules about what you were not allowed to do to a slave, how you had to feed them with what you fed, you have to, you know, dress them the way you dressed. It was almost like they became a member of the family, right? They became and then the huge encouragements to, you know, free slaves as an act of virtue and stuff like that. So I think it's about transforming attitudes, which is what really is important, because you can change names, but the reality of the situation is really there. It's what is more important is transforming how we think about other human beings. And I think then when it comes to racism, right, back to Black Lives Matter, I think that's another thing that I found about Islam is that, you know, that very, very strong ethos, you know, there's no difference between the white and the black, the Arab, the non-Arab, you know, your tribes and nations to know one another, not hate one another. The best of you is only the most pious, right? These are very, very strong messages, right? That anyone who's sincere about their religion, right, I think will make a real strong effort to get rid of that racism and tribalism out of their system. You know.
I wanted to speak to you about the Dawah in UK. Dawah to our own tribe. I was speaking about tribes. You know, I feel like obviously in the major cities there's a lot of Muslims, London, Birmingham, Manchester, you know, all the big cities. But a lot of the countryside, you know, the villages, there's very little Islam and Muslims, and I feel that a large portion of our tribe has not heard the message.
I think interacting with, like, it's very interesting that in places where they have high immigrant populations and high Muslim populations, generally people's attitude towards immigrants and Muslims is positive, right? It's more positive. It's where they don't interact, where they don't actually have living experiences of meeting and talking to and having Muslim friends, right? That's the key. The key is having friends who are Muslim, you know. And I think when people do meet Muslims and they see they're human beings like they're human beings, right? And maybe they might even admire and respect some of the values that they have as Muslims, right? Then that's, you know, that's a great way of breaking down barriers. You know, I mean, you know, I live in this town here, and I think we're the only Muslims. I mean, there's us and maybe someone else, you know, the only Muslims in the town, right? But, you know, it's one step maybe, you know, we don't really go out there and preach to people or anything like that. But, you know, people see us, they see our presence, our kids are around, you know, they interact with us. My wife still, mashallah, wears the full niqab, goes into town. Like, people are very polite and very nice and generally super friendly and treat her really nicely, you know.
The thing is, you know what English people are like, though. They'll never say it to your face. They're like...
No, I think there's... you're right.
Even
sometimes there's a polite sort of whatever, but you know the difference between that and people who are actually quite genuine. And my wife is actually quite a sort of conversationalist type of person. She's like, she will really just... I think people get surprised how, you know, like how she communicates really like clearly and positively, and, you know, like it's sort of like, what? Like sometimes like, you can speak. Isn't it ironic now, bro, with all the face
Right, I
masks and
know,
the
everyone has to
coronavirus
wear
face
them.
masks? Honestly, I went to the co-op today, and it was like this girl at the counter with, with a face mask, and it's like, oh my god, like that's like a niqab. Like this is like a real, like this is just like, what, this is weird.
No, it's crazy, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what was your inspiration for the Man in the Red Underpants?
Well, I used to, we still do this Dawah training course.
Yeah.
Like before IERA,
Just to clarify, it's your book. It's the name of your book.
Yeah, it's the name of a book that I wrote.
It's not like something else.
It's not from back in the club days. Shake your groove thing. So yeah, no, like, so I used to give this Dawah training course, which is basically what is now known as the Go Rap method. I didn't call it that in those days. It was I called it the systematic approach to Dawah. And it was very much like inspired by a sheikh who basically gave me some advice about the right way to give Dawah, and basically told me don't bother answering all of these questions, just go back to the essence of Islam. Is there a God? Is God one? Is the Quran from God? Is Muhammad the Prophet? And I it's a revolutionary approach, really, and so I was doing this course in this, actually it was like a private house. It was just like his family and some friends and stuff, and so part of the thing is that to get people to think about, before we have a conversation about trying to understand anything about the God, the universe, whatever, let's agree on some principles. So I'd always say, look, start with your foundational principles, right? What process are you going to use in order to know what is true from what is false, right? So, like, obviously there's various things, like you're just going to follow your ancestors. Is that what you're going to do, right? Whatever they did, you're going to do, right? Is it you're going to just wait for some writing in the sky or something? Like, what process are you going to do to? So the point is that we should use reason, right? Or we should use common sense, right? So that so I used to say, look, if some guy came on, you can see these bikers. I don't know why these bikers are stuck in my head. These Hell's Angels, right?
We've seen some coming down, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot around.
A lot of them,
if you saw someone, right, with love and hate tattooed on their fists, with a biker jacket knocking on your door saying, "I'll come to read your gas meter," what would you do? Would you let him in your house? Would you let him read your gas? You'd say, "Get lost, mate," So
you call the police.
Yeah, so that exactly, call the police. So that was the example I would give, right? Yeah. But then I would get the students in the class to practice the conversation. So I'd say, okay, this is what you say. So, but you have to make it your own, right? You don't just use my example. So this one guy, one of the students, he said, what if a man wearing nothing but red underpants came knocking on your door saying, "I've come to read your gas meter"? And I said, that is just genius, right? I dropped the biker love-hate thing. I demanded, it's like, boom, it was just such a powerful, and that's it. Yeah. From then I used it in my Dawah training from then on. It became the title of my book, because this student, that's what he thought of himself. So that's where it came from. Yeah.
I think this was one of the most popular Dawah books, really. Yeah. Over the past however many years. When did you?
I don't know. It was, interestingly enough, that book was really based upon a letter that I'd written to my dad years and years ago. And he had given me this Economist, like the Economist magazine used to have these inserts, right, about various countries. And one month they had this insert, not about countries, but about Islam, right? And it was talking about Samuel Huntington, Clash of Civilizations, and this whole thing was about Islam and the West, and is there a clash or whatever. And my dad used to read The Economist, right, a lot, and he gave me this and said, well, what do you think of this? And then I tried to have a conversation. Within minutes it was an argument. So I said, okay, Dad, let's forget the thing. I'm going to write you something. So I literally wrote him what ended up being, a 100-page, almost a book, right? It was in 2 parts. The first part was really basically proving that Islam is the truth, right? That was really more or less the foundation of what became the Man in the Red Underpants, like a very slimmed down version, right? And that, interestingly enough, that paper was in the early days of the internet, like early days of the internet, right? That was all over the internet, to the extent that the Rand Corporation, right? They wrote, you could probably still find it, they wrote a paper called Democratizing Islam, right?
Wow.
Okay. And they quoted me twice in that paper based upon this letter that I written to my dad, right? That was all over the internet. Twice they'd quoted me, the Rand Corporation, yeah? Because I basically said, the West don't believe in human rights, they don't believe in any of this stuff, right? When it's convenient for them, they believe in it, right? And so they quoted, you know, they took bits from my things. So, yeah, so it has actually, that book, in a sense, has a long history. It goes like way back to other stuff that was around on the internet, and I can't even remember what that...
Because when I think of Dawah books, I mean, the only other things really out there are like...
It's very different, isn't it?
A lot of them are like just transcripts of debates and things like that. They're not really anything.
Or just, you know, just Bible bashing.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like the Ahmadiyya stuff, which had its time and place. But you know, not really Dawah to Islam, is it?
No, it's not.
Or then you have Islam in Focus, which is almost sort of like Islam says this and Islam says that. There were a few great,
but there were the intention.
Yeah, there were a few good books, but again, even Towards Understanding Islam by Maududi, he never really wrote that for non-Muslims, right? I think Dr. Bilal Phillips wrote a few really good little booklets, but then they were focusing on one particular dimension. One particular thing. But I mean, there have been books, but I think partly because of our era, and we published it and pushed it out, and the title's catchy, and it was all based on research as well. Because one of the things we'd found out through research was that if you have the word Islam written on a book, people will not pick it up. So if you left, for example, a pile of books in a doctor's surgery, and one said Jesus in Islam and one said the truth about Jesus, the ones Jesus in Islam will literally, no one will touch it. Islam is there, they will not touch it. The other one, they'll pick it up. So like there was so back in the days when we started our era, that's why it's called the Research, Islamic Education and Research Foundation, because we wanted to look into those things, like, you know, what makes something attractive? Why would a person read a book? And even when the book begins, it's sort of trying to draw a person in a little bit, not straight into...
The first page is like, what's going on here?
It's the hook, you know,
No, it's good. And I guess this is like the basis of the Ayera Dawah, really. Yeah. Because, you know, what I like about Ayera, alhamdulillah, you know, done a lot of work with you guys.
Yeah, of course.
Volunteering and travelling and different things. You know, thank you for inviting me to the Brazil thing. That was amazing, mashallah.
May Allah bless you, all the work you did, mashallah.
But, you know, the good thing is you got the everyday Muslim giving Dawah. Yep. And this is so important because...
And it's not difficult, right? Once you know the method, you know a simple thing like go right. You don't need to study the Bible. You don't need to study Bhagavad Gita to remember verses. You don't need to.
It's just about your religion.
Go to Tawheed. Talk about Islam. Talk about how we know Allah exists and that Allah is one. How do we know the Quran is from Allah? It's very simple. And literally the stuff you can learn in a day. Yeah. Right?
You should already know, basically.
Most of it you should already know anyway. Right? It's just about putting it together systematically. And the beautiful thing is, it's very logical. It has a very logical, like step by step by step. And if the person you're talking to doesn't want to take the next step, you say, okay, that's it. It's been nice talking to you. Let's leave it there. There's no need to go any further, right? If a person doesn't accept that there's a God, why would you want to talk about hijab? Like, why? He doesn't even believe there's a God. What's the point? Leave it. You know? Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah khair. It's been nice to see you, and hopefully we'll catch up again.
Yeah, inshallah, bro. Inshallah, in 5 minutes, inshallah. In a warmer location.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء.